Greetings and welcome back to room 303 and our chats with Emily as we're calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson and the Johnson edition. We turn now to poem 134, Perhaps You'd Like to Buy a Flower. Now, I think that this poem works rather nicely with 133, the poem that precedes it in the Johnson edition. This is another flower poem. But I think more importantly, this is a poem about poetry. And we've seen this already a number of times in our earlier discussions. Our assumptions are that you've been following our lectures at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily, our playlist. I'm hopeful that you've already been introduced to our set of introductory comments, and I'm hopeful that you have worked through the preceding 133 poems we just finished with, As Children Bid the Guest Good Night. We're in some ways back to poem 132, where poems are like a cup of wine. Here, for her, a poem is like a flower. Now, just to inform, the Dickinson house on North Pleasant Street apparently had roses that were planted in the dooryard itself, and we'll have some referencing possibly to that in this poem. Perhaps you'd like to buy a flower, but I could never sell. If you'd like to borrow until the daffodil unties her yellow bonnet beneath the village door, until the bees from clover rose their hock and sherry draw, why, I will lend until just then, but not an hour more. Exclamation point again, of course. Now, I love the tone of voice here. And again, the poem can be read as, hey, I'll loan you, but not for long type of thing. But it's probably clear to me that this poem is to be read as a metaphor. The flower she's wanting to loan would be a poem that maybe she would want you to read. She begins with the word perhaps. When we hit poem 696, Acres of Perhaps, I've told you her love of that word. Perhaps you'd like to buy a flower, but I could never sell, and I'm only going to loan it to you no longer than an hour, suggests, of course, two things. Her love of her flowers, but more importantly, her love of her poetry. And I think here as well that she's being a bit tongue-in-cheek. And when she's talking about buying the flower and never selling the flower, I think she's talking possibly about publishing a poem or more. If you'd like to borrow it, this idea of economic language, we come back to it. At poem 240, when we get there, she'll say, I could borrow a bonnet of the lark. And that notion of I'll share it with you for a brief period of time. Notice the daffodil untying the yellow bonnet beneath the village door. Again, she had roses at her own father's door. Until the bees from clover rose, right, the zigzagging of the bees. Notice all the sounds here. The bees, rose, sherry, her hawk and sherry draw. Why? Notice the use of the word why. And it's again very colloquial. Why? And then she says, I'll lend until just then, but not an hour more. I'll let you lend. I'll let you borrow. Again, back to the economic language. Now, I think that there's a number of things going on here in this poem, actually. I think its argument here is it's hard to let things go, especially things that you care about. In this regards, I love my flowers, I don't want to let them go. But I think this is an extended metaphor, it to be. I think she's actually talking about a poem or more that she doesn't want to let go. And in that regards, when we hit poem number 441, we've mentioned this a number of times. Many have argued, and I certainly have as well, that if you want to introduce people to Emily Dickinson, one of the best ways to do it is 441. This is my letter to the world that never wrote to me, the simple news that nature told with tender majesty. Her message is committed to hands I cannot see. For love of her, sweet countrymen, judge tenderly of me. Now, we'll have a whole lot to say about this poem when we hit 441, but I just want to point out now this idea that tender is mentioned twice. To me, this is a tender poem. That is to say, I will lend it to you, but I won't let you buy one of my flowers, one of my poems. And of course, again, we're back to poem 132, where a poem is like a cup of unaccustomed wine. Finally, at 3b, was a time in your own life when you struggled to let something go, when you wanted to hold on to it, you didn't want to, you might lend it, but you're definitely not selling it. What was a time for you that happened? Thank you.